Red Dawn, the 8th Doctor Who Big Finish audio release, first released in 4 parts on 2 CDs on the 4th of May 2000. In this particular story, the 5th Doctor, played by Peter Davison, and Peri Brown, voiced by Nicola Bryant, end up on Mars, and they encounter the Ares 1 mission, a mission launched by the Webster Corporation, headed by Leo Webster. Now, while there, they meet several astronauts who have seemingly been sent to kind of investigate Mars, kind of explore Mars, and find whatever they can there. You got Commander Lee Forbes, voiced by Robert Jezik, pilot Susan Roberts, voiced by Maureen Oakley, a geologist named Tanya Webster, voiced by Georgia Moffat, who's also Leo Webster's niece, and her cousin, presumably Leo's son, Paul Webster, voiced by Stephen Fewell, who is also the head of the Webster Corporation Defense Division. But this is Mars that they're exploring, and we all know what's on Mars in terms of Doctor Who: Ice Warriors. They end up in the tomb of one of the leading Ice Warriors, Istal, and they manage to reactivate several of the Ice Warriors, including Zal, voiced by Matthew Brenner, Sast, voiced by Hilton Collins, Rasper, voiced by Gary Russell, Zismar, voiced by Alistair Locke, and Scan, voiced by Jason Hay Ellery. Now, I haven't listened to that many kind of Doctor Who Big Finish audio releases from Peter Davison. I think this is only like the 3rd so far that I've actually listened to of his era. I mean, the 3 that I've listened to so far from him was Spare Parts, which I actually think is one of the best of the Big Finish audio releases, and Sirens of Time, which last time I did a ranking came down the bottom, although I did still like it. This, I honestly think, is a great story, and I do love it. It's also got several returning actors, or returning voice actors in this case. Matthew Brenner, upon looking up the kind of cast of this story, I saw his name on the list and thought, hold on a minute, I'm pretty sure I've seen that name somewhere before, and I looked it up, and he was actually in the last Big Finish audio release that I reviewed, that being Whispers of Terror. He voiced Vistine Crane. I'll put a card up there if I remember to do so for that video, and also Hilton Collins is also a returner. I mean, he did several Big Finish audio releases, but the ones that I've listened to so far, including Whispers of Terror, as I've just mentioned, Storm Warning, and Sword of Orion, which is, yeah, nice. I also do like the addition here of Georgia Moffat as Tanya Webster. Now, for those who might need a little reminding, although I doubt you will, Georgia Moffat played Jenny in the 2008 Doctor Who 10th Doctor episode, The Doctor's Daughter. She played the Doctor's daughter on screen, and she would later go on to marry David Tennant. She is also the daughter of Peter Davison. So, even though this was released in 2000 during the Wilderness years, I do still like that father and daughter did actually get a story together. There's a story where they could act, in a sense, alongside each other. It would have been the recording booth, but still have a story where those two act alongside each other. I love that. And it is nice that Georgia Moffat did get to have another role in the Doctor Who universe before The Doctor's Daughter, and have one with her father. In the story, I believe Tanya is supposed to be 17, to which I don't know Georgia Moffat's exact birth date, so I can't tell if she actually was 17 at that time, but yeah. But then another one of the reasons why I love this story is that it does kind of combine with other Ice Warrior stories we had before. Like, I personally haven't seen their first appearance in the Ice Warriors, which I know that one has been released in DVD form, so maybe I'll get it someday and take a look. But the Ice Warriors are one of those villains, or one of those monsters in Doctor Who that kind of goes back and forth between being good and being evil. Like, it takes something like the Seeds of Doom or the Monster of Peladon. They're very clearly the villains. Like, they, or even in Cold War, that definitely had a villainous spin to it. But then you've got stories where you actually do get to see a more sympathetic side to them, or actually see them in a good light, like protagonists, such as in The Curse of Peladon or Empress of Mars. And this one kind of dabbles between the two. Like, I'm going to have to go into spoilers here because I can't really talk about the rest of the story without it. But it turns out that the villains, or the antagonists in this particular story, are actually the humans. Because they already knew about Ice Warrior life on Mars. They already knew about the Ice Warriors. Like, a probe or a mission had been sent before, and they had brought back damaged technology and also the parts of an Ice Warrior, and included in that was DNA. And it turns out that Georgia Moffat's character of Tanya Webster, she isn't actually the cousin of Paul or the niece of Leo. She was actually an experiment. An experiment to combine technology, human DNA, and Ice Warrior DNA. And what Paul Webster wants to do is, as I said, he's the head of the Webster Corporation Defense Division. He wants to capture an Ice Warrior alive, bring it back to Earth, and then use that in their experiments to combine human DNA with Ice Warrior DNA and technology to create a new breed of, I think, super soldiers. And as you can see him getting more and more desperate, you do start to see the evil side come out to him, and the Ice Warriors kind of slip into more kind of meek roles. I mean, they're not defenseless. They're prepared to fight to defend their honor, but at the same time, they do a lot of stuff with it. And even just having, when one of them, I think, Zal, when he ultimately decides to kind of sacrifice himself and give his life to be the one that takes back to Earth, the way they actually manage to get around it, I actually think is quite clever, because he wishes to see just one more Martian sunset, to which Paul allows that. But then it turns out that Mars's atmosphere now, because of the Ice Warriors, is so thin that he's essentially killed by radiation from the sun. Like, the Red Dawn is ultimately what kills him, and Paul, upon realizing that Zal is dying, he becomes even more desperate, because he had planned to take Zal back to Earth with him for their experiments, and now Tanya and the Doctor have to run away at quite top speed, but then the Ice Warriors are ready to shoot Paul down. And I do actually think that the story does show both sides. The Ice Warriors is both a war-hungry race, but also one that wants to avoid conflict if possible. And I feel with creatures like the Ice Warriors, it is great when you can see both sides, the ones who want to fight and the ones who don't want to fight, and how they ultimately come to an agreement of peace. I feel that that's great. And you know what? Red Dawn, if you haven't listened to it yet, and I've just spoiled everything, I'm sorry, but if you haven't listened to Red Dawn, I'd say give it a shot. You won't regret it. It is, I think, one of the great stories. I think I did a ranking recently on social media of my of all the Big Finish audio dramas I listened to so far, and I think Red Dawn was at number 4. Like, Spare Parts was up at the top, but Red Dawn, I think people definitely should check out if you get the chance. So there you go. There's my thoughts on the Doctor Who Big Finish audio drama, Red Dawn. Anyway, will be my next one. I'll have to wait and see. Anyway, until next time, see ya.